Hey guys, Robbie Falk here from Dallas, Texas. I'm in my hotel room, and apologize for the aesthetics and everything, but I didn't want to get in the middle of that media circus over at the Omni Hotel for SEC Media Days. So I decided just to come back here and kind of recap what I've seen today. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the Mississippi State's MLB Draft that happened this week as well, but wanted to start with updating you kind of on what's happened, and basically it's not much of anything at SEC Media Days. Honestly, it's all kind of a circus, and that we don't learn just a ton from it. But we did get a chance to talk to Blake Shapen for the first time. I think he talked at Manning Passing Academy, but as an MSU media entity, we have not been able to talk to Blake Shapen since he's been at Mississippi State. So it was really interesting to get his thoughts on why he chose Mississippi State, why he chose to come here, why Jeff Lebby, why this offense, things like that, and get to know him just a little bit more. And it was really kind of delightful to talk to a guy that is a veteran. He knows what he wants. He knows what he has to do this year. And so it was kind of a business-like approach from him, even, talking to him about NCAA football and the opportunity to play himself on the game and how cool that was. I mean, he was just kind of a guy that was nonchalant, yeah, I'm excited about playing it, but, whatever. So he is a very business-like kind of guy, and it was just really cool to get to know him a little bit and to know his personality a little bit and kind of see how he ticks. But when he was talking about why he chose Mississippi State, why he chose to come play for Jeff Lebby, it was interesting how it all played out. If you think back to that time in early December, we initially thought that Mississippi State was going to go after two quarterbacks. Jeff Lebby was going after two guys, and I do think initially that was the plan, to go after a couple of guys, go after a first and foremost a proven guy, a guy that has maybe even had ties to Jeff Lebby and his offense. And initially that was thought to be probably Dillon Gabriel, and Mississippi State was going to be a player for him. And when it kind of came to fruition that they weren't going to be a player for him and he was going after a bigger, more national name, a team that probably is going to compete for national championship this year, a top four seeding in the playoffs in Oregon, who's going to be a really good team, you start to realize that you're probably not going to be able to get a guy like that. And what I mean by that is a guy that's going to be a hotly recruited prospect. When he entered the portal, it actually coincided with Jeff Lebby taking the job at Mississippi State, and he said that the day he entered the portal, he got a call from Jeff Lebby. And as Lebby's kind of working behind the scenes, it becomes clear that he focused in on Blake Shapen being his guy. He knew about him coaching at Oklahoma, kind of seeing some film on him, seeing him play at Baylor, and seeing what he did there when he was healthy. Jeff Lebby identified that immediately as a guy that he wanted to bring in as his quarterback. And talking to Blake Shapen, I asked him point blank, what is it you think Jeff Lebby saw in you that he felt like you were the quarterback that he was going to be able to do some big things with at Mississippi State? And what he basically said was the ability to get the ball out quickly. Jeff Lebby likes that out of his quarterbacks. He wants to be able to release the ball quickly, not be a guy that's going to hang on to it for a long period of time. Also a guy that can scramble in the pocket if need be able to use his legs to move the pocket, to extend plays, to take off and run if he needs to in certain plays. And we've seen that in the past with Matt Corral and Dillon Gabriel, both, and even Jackson Arnold some at Oklahoma, who Jeff Lebby recruited to come to Oklahoma. So it was really a perfect fit for Jeff Lebby. Everything that he did pretty well, Jeff Lebby identified as a guy that could help Mississippi State. And Lebby even reiterated that when he was talking about him in the big room, when we talked to Jeff Lebby in the main room and what you saw on television. Lebby talked about the fact that he felt like Blake Shapen was a guy that could help them compete right now. They needed a guy that wasn't going to bring them along slowly, that could help them score points now in year one. And that's basically what he did. And Lebby, again, also talking about today what he likes about his offense, his running backs. He was high on Devon Booth when he talked about him, bringing in the transfer portal guys. And then he stated in the press conference setting that he doesn't want to recruit the transfer portal like he did this year. State went pretty heavy in the transfer portal this year in the offseason, and that was by necessity. That was, they needed the guys to come in right away that could kind of get them off the ground and keep them going. What Jeff Lebby wants to do at Mississippi State is no different than what Dan Mullen did and what Mike Leach was wanting to do. He wants to build it with high school and junior college classes. That doesn't mean he's not going to use the transfer portal. I think he still does that, but I don't think it's going to be, I think a lot of people get this misconception when they compare him to Lane Kiffin because of their past relationship and they've worked together. I don't think he's going to have the same approach as Lane Kiffin. And he's talked about this in different radio interviews and the press conferences that we've had with him. He wants to be able to recruit the state of Mississippi and the surrounding area and develop those players. He doesn't want to have a turnover of the roster and go out there and have mass transfers out of the portal coming in and making an impact. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing for Mississippi State. I think they can have success doing that, having the developmental type program in that. It's not that you're taking players that are under the radar prospects, what we saw with Dan Mullen. It's that you're retaining players on the roster, you're developing players, they're ready when their time's called. And the perfect example is the other two guys that he brought in today, and that's Albert Reese and John Lewis. Both of those players are players that have kind of bided their time, worked their way up the depth chart. Now they're ready for their moment. And I think both of those players, talked about that today and that they're ready for their moment today. I talked to John Lewis about the leadership and how he's grown there, and he is ready for his opportunity. He played under, a different defensive coordinator. He played under Nathaniel Watson and Jet Johnson, those guys, and he's been prepared for this. This is a different group that he's playing with this year, but I really do believe that John Lewis could have a big season for Mississippi State. And the same thing for Albert Reese on the offensive line, who's played multiple positions. He's been in special teams. He's been coming off the bench. This year, he's going to be one of the leaders of the offensive line. I think that's evident by the fact that Jeff Lebby brought them today. So just a little background of what we did today. We started off at about 8:30 this morning. We talked to Albert Reese and John Lewis in a side room that was basically MSU media. Very few national media came in there. It was pretty much a local media contingent that got a chance to talk to those guys. Then Blake Shapen came in. We talked to him for a little bit as well. And then Jeff Lebby, after making some rounds, came in there. We got about 10, 15 minutes with him. So some really good interviews. And if you are interested, you can go check out those interviews on the Maroon and White Daily YouTube page. And I wanted to get the exact name of that. I think it's just Maroon and White Daily, that YouTube page, so you can go subscribe to that if you haven't already. And I guess I'm on it right now, so you can just click on it and subscribe. But it's just Maroon and White Daily right here, where our numbers are getting better. We've got some good interviews on there. We got an interview with Blake Shapen, Jeff Lebby, Lewis, and Albert Reese separately that you guys can look at. And they're all the 3-player interviews are somewhere from 5 to 6 or 7 minutes, and then we have a 12-minute interview with Jeff Lebby, and I think you guys will enjoy seeing that. And then if you go check out our website right now, I've got not the full transcript. I took away a couple of things that Lebby said about Oklahoma just because I didn't think it was totally relevant to Mississippi State fans, but most of the press conference transcript that he had in the big room, if you weren't able to watch it, is on our page. You can go check that out. And then I have a nice little feature on Blake Shapen if you guys would like to read that as well. And then, of course, we've got a ton of stuff on Mississippi State baseball from the last few days, Mississippi State recruiting. Just a lot of stuff being poured out by myself and Paul Jones. So come check that out. And don't forget to come subscribe to us. We would love to have you be a part of our community. I think we have $1 for 3 months right now, which is an incredible deal. If you come sign up today, you can get that. Of course, when it goes back, you will be paying the full price when that runs out. And you're welcome to cancel your membership if you like to. But I think you're going to love it. I think you're going to love being there with this community and getting the information that you get from Paul Jones and myself on a daily basis. So come check us out. We'd love to have you. Try us out for 3 months. It's $1. You can't get anything for $1 anymore. I mean, you really can't. But you can get really in-depth Mississippi State recruiting and team news for $1 for these next 3 months. And that takes you into the football season. So this is the time to do it. We have a huge recruiting weekend coming up next weekend as Mississippi State hosts their annual cookout at Jeff Levy's house. Paul Jones will be on top of that, giving you the list of visitors that are expected, and then whatever's coming during that visit and after, he'll have that as well. Real quick before we get out of here on this little Talkin Dawgs session that we got, Mississippi State had a tremendous MLB draft, one of the best drafts in school history for this team, and it wasn't all good news for Mississippi State, but it is good news in the fact that you're putting another tremendous amount of players into the minor leagues. Mississippi State, one of the leaders in the SEC in minor league players and MLB players, and they led the country this year in draft picks. I mean, there's been very few teams over the years, especially in the SEC, that have poured out the talent that Mississippi State has from college to pro. And this was just an incredible job. And not all these guys were ranked very high coming out of high school. For all the grief that we've given Mississippi State coaches, and it's been warranted, folks, it absolutely has. With Chris Lemonis, and you can argue that they did less with more here this year with the talent that came out. Not being able to host was a disappointment, but I don't really want to dive into that right at this moment. I want to talk about the good that this draft did and kind of shows you the job that Justin Parker especially did with his pitching staff. A school record tying 11 players drafted, and that doesn't include 3 guys that were incoming players. You had 2 true freshmen, Dante Norai, who's going to sign with the Philadelphia Phillies after a 27th overall pick in the first round. And then also Conrad Kaysen, who's a two-way guy. I don't think he would have been drafted in the first 10 rounds had a team not told him he could probably play multiple positions. And I don't think that's going to be something that happens for him moving forward, long term. But I do think he's going to be able to ease his way out of that. And I talked to him a couple weeks ago about this. He understands that eventually he's probably going to be a pitcher, but he's not quite ready to give up playing shortstop and then middle infield and also hitting. And that was one selling point for him to come to Mississippi State. They were going to allow him to hit, play shortstop. Same thing that State did with Drangelo Sangea, but ultimately he ended up pitching. I think Conrad probably would have done that as well, but the Boston Red Sox picked him in the 8th round, much higher draft pick than the 8th round. But I think that's probably where they agreed to his number and also probably agreed to allow him to play multiple positions. I don't know if that'll stick, like I said, but he was signed as a two-way player. So both those guys come off the board in the first couple of days. And then Kentucky transfer right-handed pitcher Travis Smith, who actually has 2 more years remaining. He comes off in the 15th round. I've heard that he's going to sign. That's what I heard before the draft. I don't really know. Justin Parker obviously has something to sell to him to come this year and improve that paycheck. We'll see what happens. But Justin Parker, man, I don't know how he isn't able to get more players to Mississippi State this year. It really doesn't make any sense because this is an insane job that he did. Drangelo Sangea goes from an 8-run unearned average as a freshman to 3.5 something, whatever it was a really good Saturday starter for the Bulldogs. He's drafted 15th overall. He goes from 18th round pick as a high school senior and a shortstop to a 15th round pick as a sophomore eligible player. He would have been maybe 1-1 had he come back to Mississippi State for a junior season. That's how good he was this year and still room to grow. I think Drangelo is a big leaguer. I think he's going to be a big leaguer within 3 years, 2 or 3 years. It he would have to encounter an injury or something. I think he is on that path, and he's getting better and better. He's going to be really good, I believe. And then Cal Steven, what a job Justin Parker and Cal Steven did, developing his game in a year. You go from, 8-run earned run average as a freshman down to 5-something. He was getting better as the year went on with Purdue, transfers to Mississippi State, was easily, I think, the second best pitcher in the league this year behind Hagen Smith. Second round pick, 59th overall to the Toronto Blue Jays. Just an incredible year for him. Was competitive in just about every start this year after that LSU game, and was just a really good Friday night starter for the Bulldogs. I think they had the second best starter in the league with him after Hagen Smith, as I said. And then Nate Dohm, third round, 82nd overall to the New York Mets. He went early in the third day or second day. That is your weekend rotation, your starting rotation for the first weekend, and then for non-conference play was Nate Dohm, Cal Steven, and Durangelo Sangio. They all go in the first 3 rounds. That's one of the best jobs, I think, by a coach. And, Nate Dohm probably would have been drafted higher had he been healthy this year, but that just didn't come to fruition. But still a really good non-conference slate for him, and then he came back and pitched a few games, was pretty good too. But your starting rotation, that's just an excellent selling point for Mississippi State. And you look at some of the other pitchers, Brooks Auger drafted in the 6th round of the Dodgers. Colby Holcomb, probably the only guy on this list that didn't live up to expectations or that Justin Parker wasn't able to really get a lot out of. And Brooks Auger, I thought, was really good this year after coming back from Tommy John. And then you look at the guys that were your best bullpen pitchers, Tyson Harden, Tyler Davis, and Cam Schuelke, all drafted on day 3. Harden going to the Brewers, Tyler Davis to the Royals, and then Schuelke to the Guardians. Harden and Davis are a ultimate, resume seller for Justin Parker. The other guys are really good pieces too, but we kind of knew they had it in them. For him to turn around Harden and Davis after the years that they had last year was just an amazing job. And then Schuelke was just solid for you this year at times. 3-arm slot guy, very different kind of pitcher, and I don't know where that translates on the next level. I don't know what happens with him, but he's a bulldog. He fights on the mound. He's a guy that you want in your locker room, and he's pitched in the Cape Cod League for the last 3 years and been one of the best pitchers. So the stuff might not be overpowering. It might not be what you usually see in the MLB or anything like that, but he's a guy that's found a way to be effective, and we'll see. I think he's probably going to sign. I don't have any reservations about him signing at this point. I don't think you should expect him to be back. I think he's going to sign. Same for Tyson Harden. Tyler Davis was a senior anyway. These other guys are going to sign as well. As far as the positional players, you had Dakota Jordan fell in the draft a little bit. I think a lot of that had to do with his signability and what he was demanding from a price standpoint for his services. Eventually, the San Francisco Giants select him 116th overall. I mean, this is a guy that was probably a top 40 guy in the draft, and that kind of shows you how close Mississippi State was probably to getting him back. Sophomore eligible, so he had that leverage year left, and he had a very high number. I was hearing somewhere from 2 to 2.5 million for him, and a lot of teams weren't willing to spend that on him, and he was holding strong with that. He has one of the more notorious agents and Scott Boras representing him, and they were very stern on that number from what I was told in that first night. And even into the next day in San Francisco, they saved a lot of money. They didn't have a 2nd or 3rd round pick. Like I said, might be the only team that could have gotten him, because I don't know if he would have kept falling, if anybody would have been willing to reach that number. And we'll see exactly what that number is. I think Jim Callis or someone usually keeps up with that stuff. We'll see what he signs for eventually. And then Connor Hyzak, drafted on day 3, 13th round. Just a great job by him this year, going from a backup his first year on campus to last year was probably State's best hitter in SEC play. And David Mershon was one that we were watching as a possibility to go undrafted. I expect him to sign. He gets drafted in the 18th round. I've heard for a long time that David Mershon and his family are interested in moving on, going to the next level. We'll see if he does that, but I'm hearing that he is expected to sign. And in the coming days, we'll see if they're able to come to an agreement with the Angels. But 11 players drafted, ties a school record, the most players drafted in 20 rounds in school history, and led the country. They had 2 more players drafted than anybody else in the country, and that's not even counting, like I said, Dante Nori and Travis Smith and Conrad Kaysen. So the talent was there. Talent was there for Mississippi State to be much better. Hopefully they can figure it out. I think the lineup's going to be much better this year, much more competitive at bats. Hunter Hines went undrafted. That was one we weren't expecting. You're getting him back next year. That's a huge bat in the middle lineup. Even through his struggles this year, he's capable of being somewhere around 280, probably as a hitter. He's capable of hitting 20-plus home runs. He's, I think, 13 away from the school record of Rafael Palmeiro. So this year would be shocking if he doesn't break the school record if he's healthy. So if you get 280 out of him, get about 20 home runs, I think that's a great season for Hunter Hines, and your lineup is probably pretty solid. You got a lot of guys there that can compete at the plate, that can give you good solid at bats, that can get on base, and you have depth this year. It might not be, top of the SEC as far as talent, but the depth is there where it's not like last year where you had basically 1 or 2 guys that could come off the bench. So I like the offensive pieces. We'll see with pitching. They need to add a couple of pitchers, I think, out of the portal to finish things out to really feel good about it. But Justin Parker also feels good about what he has, and we'll see if he's on the money with that or not. But he's earned a little bit of leeway and a little bit of trust, I think. So, all right, guys, I'm going to cut out of here. I got a couple more things to write, and then Brian and I will be recording a podcast here. It's about 3:45 here in Dallas on Tuesday, and about 6 o'clock we're going to record. So later tonight on Tuesday, you should be able to listen to Thunder and Lightning podcast to kind of recap the day that we had. I don't think we'll have a podcast on Friday, so we might be back. But we did get a couple podcasts in here, so if you guys are Thunder and Lightning listeners, that's for y'all. But thank you for watching this. Again, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Maroon and White Daily. Subscribe to maroonandwhitedaily.com. We'd love to have you come join the message board, come join the conversation. It's the best message board for Mississippi State sports out there, and we'd love to come talk to you about anything Mississippi State related. Paul and I are on the board a lot. We're very accessible if you have questions. We love to interact with you guys, so come check us out. All right, guys, appreciate you. Hope you have a great rest of the week. We'll catch you down the road.